If you're running a small business and are looking to grow, it stands a pretty good chance that you're already out networking. And if you're out networking, it's only a matter of time before you're invited to a BNI. Well, in today's review, just for you, I visited BNI Action, an online BNI event, where in addition to our review and scoring the event using our 5-point scoring system, we'll also be giving you tips and tricks of how anyone can really maximise their networking efforts, enabling you to build better connections, have quality conversations, and ultimately make more money from networking. If you're new to my channel, my name's Brett Sheldon, founder of Your Business World. And after 17 years in the business organisation world, hosting hundreds of events and working with over 3,000 small business owners, I know what you're thinking. Networking's easy, right? Well, you'd be correct. Networking is easy. If you're looking to grow your business, especially in the business-to-business context, networking is one of the best activities you can do. I should know. My business was created off the back of my networking successes. But that doesn't stop over 90% of people who go networking simply going through the motions, and it's estimated that less than 1% of networkers do so at the highest level. And that's what this networking review series is all about, helping you get more bang from your buck when you're going out networking, whilst at the same time showcasing events that don't always get the publicity or the credit that they deserve. But that's enough waffling. Let's get down to the nitty gritty, because I know that you really want to know how well BNI scored, and you'll also want to know the tips that I'm going to give you of how to make money from this type of event. If this is the first networking review of ours you've ever seen, this video has 3 parts, and I want you to feel comfortable to freely skip ahead to whichever sections that you find most useful. Should you have any questions or comments, please feel free to add them in the usual places. And if you have any private questions you want to ask, please use this QR code or the link in the description where you can ask me anything from networking or business related. Unless you're Anne Hathaway, then you really can ask me anything. So in regards to the 3 parts, firstly, I'm going to give you an overview of this event, explaining about the format and what you can expect should you want to either attend this event or another event of this kind. Secondly, I'll be scoring the event using our 5-point scoring system that we use to allow a level playing field for all events regardless of format, platform or size. And finally, I'll be drawing on my 17 years worth of experience in the networking world to give you tips of what I did to get value from this event and what I would do in the future should I go back to get even more bang for my buck. So if you're really new to networking, give it time. You will be invited to a BNI sooner or later, because BNI really is the big daddy of the networking industry. BNI, or Business Network International to give it its full name, was founded by Ivan Misner in the 1980s, and these days can be found in over 70 countries, and according to their website they have over 11,000 groups known as chapters meeting weekly, meaning they will have hundreds of thousands of members globally. Every chapter follows a similar structure that's been developed over the years, and that structure is very formal, consisting of elevator pitches, 10-minute presentation, contribution sections, an educational element, and a whole host of stuff about BNI itself. But before we go any further, there is something that you need to know. BNI is like Marmite. And the reason for that is for a whole host of reasons, including cost, because BNI to be a member is not cheap. The amount of commitments that's expected and the structure itself, many find overwhelming. But I'm going to keep my thoughts on that completely separate, and I'll put that in a different video real soon. For the purpose of this review, I've reviewed it 100% independently and I've taken it as a standalone event, removing any of my personal views on BNI. It's the only way I can realistically review it and be completely truthful. And it's a brave thing for me to do professionally because of that Marmite effect. BNI, good or bad, is extremely emotive, and I know, and this is not to give any spoilers, but the keyboard warriors will be sharpening their typing skills already. Now, as mentioned, BNI Action is an online version of BNI. It doesn't start as silly a clock as most BNIs do. Instead, they meet up at a far more reasonable time of 9:30 AM on Tuesdays, and it's a small group with 13 members at the time of reviewing. I attended completely free of charge as a visitor, which is the norm if you're thinking about attending one, and this review was conducted following my visit on the 21st of January 2025. And from the outset, I'm going to say BNI Action was brilliantly run. It was super slick as you'd expect from a BNI, and there were some great people there. I was made to feel really welcome, and it was great to see some old faces that I haven't seen for years. From what I could tell, on the main, they follow the usual BNI system, which includes the standard pitch at the end. Now, I don't agree with that, but it's not my ball, it's what BNI does. But what was a little bit disappointing, that of the 13 members, 6 were actually not in attendance, with substitutes in their place, and 1 not actually being there at all. Hey look, this happens. It's probably just a bad week. Okay then, so scoring. As mentioned earlier, I score events on a 5-point system so I can be as fair as possible across the multitude of event types there is these days. After all, you've got in-person and online, you've got large and small, formal and informal. The range is endless. Now, the 5 elements I score are value, that's both in terms of monetary and whether it was actually worth my while being there in the first place. Engagement, after all, regardless of any networking event you go to, you want to have the chance to talk to people. Then you have numbers. Now, I don't want to get hung up on size here, because quite frankly, some of the best events I've ever attended have been the smaller events. But what I'm judging here is, are the numbers right for the event format, venue or platform? The 4th area is feeling. That's 4, is feeling, which is difficult to explain, but incorporates how you were treated by the host, if it was clicky, you know, all that je ne sais quoi you get from an event. If you go to enough events, you know what I'm talking about. And finally, the 5th area is return, which is quite simply, would I attend again? In each case, I will score either 0, 1 or 2 points, with a total score given out of 10, but the real question is, how did BNI Action score? So let's start with value. Well, membership fees aside, as a visitor, this event was completely free for me to attend, so it scores a point from the off. But from the perspective of time value, was it worth me being there? Well, sure, there were 16 people in all, which were all business owners, all looking to grow their businesses, which fundamentally makes them my target market. So when it comes to value, BNI Action, I've scored 2 out of 2. So when it comes to engagement, this is where I have a problem with the online BNI format, because for me, it just doesn't work. So apart from a small breakout room at the beginning of the meeting and a 60-second pitch, apart from that and the chat function, for a 90-minute meeting, the opportunity to engage is really limited. So whilst in theory this event is full of my target audience, I've got no way of communicating with them. Now, unless you know how to really work a networking event like this, which is what I'll cover later, sitting in silence for 89 minutes is simply inexcusable. So I'm sorry, BNI Action, when it comes to engagement, it's a 0. So when we talk about numbers, there are actually 16 people, including me, in attendance, which for an online meeting is actually perfectly fine. I've got no problem with that at all. For a BNI chapter, however, 13, which is how many members were supposed to be there, that is actually a little bit small in my view. As I always believe, 25 is actually the sweet spot, personally, because that gives the diversification without being overwhelming. And like I mentioned, it was disappointing that 6 of the 13 members wasn't there. However, this is an online event. I'm judging this as a standalone event, and all being said, I'm going to score this a credible 1 out of 2. Right then, feeling. This is something that's very, very subjective, very difficult to score, and I want you to bear with me on this, because this is where this Marmite stuff's going to be kicking in. Now, on one hand, as I explained earlier, I was made to feel really welcome. The meeting was really slick and there's some great people. I don't want anybody in this to feel disheartened, because this isn't my attention. But I can't get over the fact the BNI format as a standalone networking event online just doesn't work. Now, I'm surprised, given all the experience that we got during the pandemic and given the resources that BNI will clearly have, they haven't modified the event to work online. Now, it's not that difficult to do. I should know this. I host a lot of events. And if we can do it, BNI have got access to greater minds than me, so it's something they should have done. Now, I know that BNI itself isn't about the event per se. It's about building and forming relationships underpinned by a membership structure, and that costs from anything from $1,200 to a couple of grand worth of investment, depending upon which event you're going to. And I know that for lots of people, BNI works really well, and I've even had friends and clients that I've actually recommended join BNI. but the structure of this event just does not allow for effective engagement, and I cannot get away from the pitch at the end, and that always leaves a sour taste in my mouth. Now, that said, I have to be fair to the team at BNI Action, who did, with all this going on, still make me feel welcome and still run a good quality event from that perspective. So I'm going to score it 1 out of 2. So when it comes to whether I would return to BNI Action, it's one of those things that while there's some brilliant people there, they ran a great event and made me feel welcome. Unfortunately, the event format and the lack of engagement it basically doesn't work for me. So when it comes to scoring, would I return? Unfortunately, BNI Action, it's a 0. So total score, you're not going to need many pinkies for this, but BNI Action scores a disappointing 4 out of 10. Now, that's only my view taken from the perspective as a visitor to a standalone event. You may agree, you may disagree, and like I say, at no point have I judged this event as the value potentially given as a member of BNI. I will do that in a completely different video, so make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon so you know when it drops. And as with any event, go and try it for yourself. Your experience may be different to mine, and once again, feel free to comment basically what your experience was. Now, if you're planning to visit an online BNI, you may want to hang around now for the tips that are coming up, because there are some really simple things you can do to stop you leaving money on the table. So when it comes to the tip section of these reviews, this is the part that I actually enjoy doing. Now, there's a lot in this particular section, so you may want to save this video, jump forward and backwards, so you can make some notes. So it might be worthwhile grabbing a pen and paper if that's your thing. The first thing I want to cover here is something that only the very best networkers normally do, but something you really should do with BNI, and that's advanced preparation. The beauty of BNI is that wherever in the world you attend, BNI follows a set format. And that makes your life really easy when it comes to the things that only the top 1% of networkers do, and that's advanced preparation. Now, as soon as you book, the first thing I'd be doing is hitting Google and finding out as much information as you can, because believe it or not, you can find a lot of information about the people who are actually members of that chapter straight on a search engine. I'll show you now. It can be done in 5 seconds. So when you do your prep work, quite simply just go to whatever search engine you use, type in the name of the BNI you're going to and where it is, and that'll take you or show you a page on the BNI website where it gives you some details about that chapter. Okay, so it's dropped from 13 to 12 by the time I've actually recorded the review, but importantly it's this little bit here where it actually gives you details of all the members there, and it'll give you personal detail or contact details. It'll even give you a bit of a write-up about the businesses themselves. So why is this important? Well, quite frankly, if you've got the details of the people who are supposed to be there, you can network before the event, which is brilliant. So what I'd be doing is taking these details, going to LinkedIn and start doing some research with the people you want to connect to. I'd start off by saying hi. I would ask them questions about the business, say that you're going to be attending real soon, and that's going to really elevate your position before you're even there. In fact, the really clever networkers wouldn't even need to go to the event in reality, because all the work can be done in advance. Now, when I talk about LinkedIn as well, BNI Action, same as pretty much every chapter I've ever attended, also has their own LinkedIn group. Go and find it, find out they're talking about anything. It really is an absolute smorgasbord, I think it's called, of information that you can do before you even get there. The other beauty of actually knowing who's going to be there or who should be there is that you can actually tailor your 60-second elevator pitch to them. Now, this isn't a privilege you normally get anywhere else. It really does, or really can, set you apart from anybody else because you're talking directly to them. And that is a really good thing to do. Right then, so when it comes to event day, once again, you want to be prepared ahead. First of all, get your contact details and a very short intro onto a separate screen or copied in advance so you can paste it into the chat. The members there will probably not have your details, so therefore you want to be able to share them. If you have the ability to, open LinkedIn on a second screen or a second device, perhaps your phone, in advance, because this can be really handy for communicating outside of chat and also finding out about people who may say something that, oh, that could be interesting. So you want to find about Bob very, very quickly. Make sure you've got something to write on. Now, I personally use an iPad with a pencil, so I make lots and lots of notes as I go. But the things that people will say in their elevator pitches, the starting points for when you have one-to-ones afterwards, it gives you something to talk about, and that is really, really valuable. Now, you also want to, if they've sent it, now BNI Action didn't do this strangely, but normally they send you in advance something called the placemat. Now the placemat is basically the list of members, it has their contact details on, and again, if they've sent it in advance, you can write on that. But what BNI Action did, they sent it during the meeting, so have a way of being able to save it. And the final thing before event day is just be you. Try not to be anything you're not. Just be you, and that will put you in a good stead. Now, during the event, as I mentioned, you're not going to have much time to engage. So you're going to have to use the things at your disposal well. Now, the first tip I'm going to give you is something of a bit of an event hack you can do in a lot of events, but you have to be a bit cheeky with it. So the first thing is whatever the scheduled start time is, in this case it was 9:30, log in early. Okay, log in about 10 minutes before that scheduled start, because the members will be there making sure the setup is done. And while you're there, you get a chance to engage pre-event. It's a case of it's one of those things, steal some time. Trust me, you'll thank me for it. When it comes to the elevator pitches, make sure you make notes, because that will give you conversation starters when you're looking to build one-to-ones. And fundamentally, that's what you want to do here, is have conversations outside of the meeting. And when it comes to chat, use that chat function really well. Make sure you say hi to people that you want to speak to. Make sure you select the person you want to speak to rather than everybody. I've done this personally myself, but basically you can have conversations behind closed doors during the meeting, because trust me, when the presentation is on and when the people are doing elevator pitches, not everybody is listening. There's also a contribution section, which I haven't mentioned before, and you'll actually be asked what you like about the event. Now, as a little tip, use that time well again and say obviously something like, thank you very much for inviting me, I really enjoyed it, and then name the people that you want to talk to. It's an engagement opportunity. Use it to your benefit rather than just saying whatever they want you to. Also, beware the pitch. At the end of any BNI event, online, in person, doesn't matter what it is, there's going to be a section where you're taken to one side and you're going to be asked, do you have any questions about BNI? It's the bit where they're looking to sell you membership, okay? So once again, you can use that well to your benefit. If there's a few people actually in that room, it gives you an extra engagement chance, so use it well. And finally, during the event, make sure you download the chat about 5 minutes before the end of the meeting, because in there will be contact details, especially for the visitors. So after the event, obviously it goes without saying, make sure you follow. Everybody says the fortune's in the follow-up. I don't always agree with that 100%, because fortune's in the follow-up if you've teed the follow-up correctly. But I'll cover follow-up techniques in a separate video, and I'll talk about the things that the top 1% of networkers do but rarely discuss, and there's some really killer techniques in there. But unless you're versed in those, basically keep an eye on the socials, because there may be extra engagement opportunities there. When you contact people to book one-to-ones with those people who you want to have a chat with, use the notes you've made from their elevator pitches as conversation starters, and basically see where it goes. So that brings me to the end of this week's networking review on BNI Action and online BNI events. Now, it's taken a little bit longer than I would do normally, but let's face it, it's BNI. It was always going to take a bit longer than usual. Now, if you'd like to know where BNI Action ranked out of the 7 events I attended in January, and here's a little spoiler, it wasn't bottom, or you'd like to see a review of a very different kind of event, links to both of those videos you can now see on screen. And all that does is leaves me to say thank you very much for persevering and for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.